The OKC Thunder won the NBA championship. The Bucks waived Damian Lillard. And KD is now with the Houston Rockets. A lot has happened in a short amount of time. This also means that the AllforGrowth Videogame Draft has received new scores, updates, and completed the Overcooked Draft Challenge. Thank you for tuning in to Djinnsenng News, and I'm your reporter, Djinnsenng. Now, before I get to the scores, you have to know that some of the information is after the Overcooked Draft Challenge, which was filmed around the beginning of June. That's not too important in the grand scheme of things, but considering who won the draft challenge and the power-ups they received, it matters as the scores might have influenced some choices at the time. Now we can dive into some scores, starting with Wen Easy's Claire score at Expedition 33, scoring a 9.1. Wen getting the current second highest scoring game in the draft, in the second game to score above a 9. Sandfall Interactive's Expedition 33 coming into the scene as another Game of the Year contender, with players loving the game's art, combat, lore, and voice acting. Expedition really set itself apart. And this was followed by Wen's Death Stranding 2 getting an 8.2. Kojima Productions' sequel to Death Stranding making another splash in the scene, bringing back its emotional storytelling and visuals, along with an overhaul to movement from its predecessor, with new vehicles and structures so that deliveries are more fun and accessible. It seemed that the studio understood how struggling to get from one point to another might prevent players from playing the game at all. Either way, Wen is still getting high-scoring games, and with the rest of his roster still waiting to be released, somebody's gonna have to stop this man. Next, we have Grizz on 13th, with Doom: The Dark Ages getting an 8.2. ID Software coming out with another game published by Bethesda, creating big cinematic moments in the lore, and still keeping the brutal combat the series is known for. Next we have Ken Knows It with Mario Kart World getting an 8.4. With the game being one of Switch 2's flagship titles upon release, it seemed the game was received rather well, with new maps, race mechanics, and open world explorations. Lastly, we have Tross to Sauce, who had Elden Ring Night Rain getting another 8.2. Despite it coming after the monstrous success of Elden Ring, Night Rain still held its own, with faster paced combat compared to the previous Souls-like games, and 30-minute roguelike runs. Fans enjoyed this newer kind of game that From Software brought, because even if it wasn't Game of the Year, if you're a fan of the lore, it's always interesting to see what other stories that world had to offer. And yes, I know about GTA 6 getting delayed. Which brings me to his fourth game swap in the draft. Chaw swapped GTA 6 for The Prodigal Son Returned, Little Nightmares 3. A game that Chaws had drafted last year but had to let go because of delays. Really happy to see Little Nightmares back home, just like Chaws finally activating Windows. Now we can get a little into the Overcooked 2 Draft Challenge, which you can watch fully on the AllforGrowth YouTube channel if you want to see the players in action. The challenge being the best 2 out of 3, with the teams being Wen and Ken against Choss and Grizz. The first round went to Wen and Ken with an overwhelming lead. The second round also went to Wen and Ken, but the scores were a little bit closer, with Choss and Grizz losing because of orders taking too long since they were making pizzas in round 2, and Grizz falling off the map with a ready-to-go order of pizza. This of course meant that Wen and Ken won the Overcooked Draft Challenge, with Ken finally winning his first draft challenge ever, albeit not on his own, but hey, power-up still works the same. So since they were a team, both Wen and Ken get a power-up from a wheel spin. As Wen got a consecutive win after one win, he got to add another power-up to the wheel, adding another permalock, stating that he wanted people to sit with their own decisions. Now we can get to the spins. Wen started first, getting a permalock with 2 shuffles before the spin, securing his highest scoring game, Split Fiction, so nobody can use a power-up to take his game.
Niggas was on that. They was on the head.
Yeah, they were.
I niggas.
And Ken requesting 30 shuffles before his spin, which still did get completed by Trip, getting the power-up Pick Swap. which means he now had the ability to swap a single game between 2 other players. And after confirming with Trip if he can swap already scored games between players, Ken swapped Chaucer's 7.5 South of Midnight with Wen's unscored Ghost of Yote, stating that we have to make sure this is a game again, cause if Wen's games went untouched, Wen might have taken the entire draft all the way to the championship. Ken showed some masterful strategy here, because with swapping South of Midnight with Ghost of Yote, Wen is now locked in with South of Midnight, unless he gets a power up later. Remember when I mentioned some of the scores were after the draft challenge was completed? Here, Death Stranding 2 was not scored yet. I guess in Ken's eyes, the game was an unknown, which means he wasn't sure if he would gain a low score that might hurt Wen in the long run. So that only left Ghost of Yote, which depending on if it got delayed, Wen would get a high scoring game or be able to pick another game to draft. Cause if Ghost of Yote performs like Ghost of Tsushima, which I confirmed with Commissioner Tripp would have gotten an 8.0, Ghost of Yote might have been a solid pick on Wen's roster, which means Wen is now fully drafted with a 43.2. We'll see how that shakes out for him, cause completing your test first doesn't always mean you're at the top of the class. And finally, after everything, Tripp announced what game will be in the next draft challenge, which is Mario Kart on the Nintendo Switch. And we all know who is the happiest to know about that challenge this time. Whether the results of the player lockout would help Ken, or we see someone else take the win in the next challenge, that is all I have for you right now. I may get into the side draft that me and Commissioner Tripp have in another video. But to keep up with the main draft, be sure to follow the AllforGrowth social media and YouTube channel, just so you can get the latest on the scores and releases of footage from the previous and future draft challenges. Or you can keep it right here on my channel along with anything else I have going on. Thank you for tuning in to Djinnsenng News, and hopefully I see you next time.